Hello everyone, I'm Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IS English. In our today's video, we'll try to understand why is Article 350A of the Indian Constitution in news currently, and the reason behind this is the Supreme Court of India. Now, if you're one of the people living in the state of Rajasthan, it is very likely that you have Marwadi, Mewadi, Shekhawati, Harauti or any other Rajasthani language as your mother tongue. But when you enter into a classroom, even be it a primary school, you'll be in a state of shock because you won't find that language as a medium of instruction there. And according to Supreme Court, this disconnect between your mother tongue and the language of instruction is basically a constitutional issue. Now, Supreme Court was considering a review petition which was filed to review the judgment given by the Rajasthan High Court in an order passed in 2024. So, we are here to discuss that matter, how it basically affects your exercise of constitutional as well as other important fundamental rights when you don't get the language of your mother tongue as the medium of instruction when you enter into an educational institution. Now, the notes which I will be using in our today's session, these are very important from your exams perspective, and therefore you can go to the Telegram channel ATS Live to download them. And if you are downloading the notes, also please do not forget to subscribe to the channel also. Okay, so let us start our today's discussion by understanding what was the petitioners actually trying to seek from the High Court as well as Supreme Court of India. Now, the petitioners, basically those people who were aspirants of a recruitment exam, they wanted to include Rajasthani in the syllabus for recruitment of teachers, that is grade 3 teachers, that was done through Rajasthan eligibility exam for teachers of 2021. So they were basically asking the state to allow Rajasthani as a subject in this particular exam. In addition to that, they also wanted to mandate use of Rajasthani in the primary education, not just Rajasthani but any other local language of the state of Rajasthan. Okay, so these were their two causes of concern for which they approached the Rajasthan High Court. Now, the Rajasthani language is basically spoken by tens of millions of people in the state of Rajasthan, and it is also taught as a subject in several of the Rajasthan's university. But there is one very important caveat here. Rajasthani language is not a part of 8th schedule of the constitution. The 8th schedule of the constitution, it basically enumerates India's officially recognized language. And this is where the defense of the state government actually stood. The state government was of the opinion that only 8 scheduled languages are taught in the government's primary and upper primary schools. And as a result, for Rajasthani, there is no policy framework nor an obligation on the state government to provide Rajasthani as a medium of instruction in its supported schools or as a subject for recruitment of exams, like recruitment exams for teachers. Now, Supreme Court felt something different. Supreme Court stated that yes, 8 scheduled languages means that there should be specific constitutional protections extended to it. But that doesn't mean that other languages which are not covered in the 8th schedule, there is no obligation on the state to provide benefits to people who speak languages other than the 8th schedule language. And this is where Supreme Court made a very important statement. Supreme Court stated that the opinion or the approach of the state government here actually was a lackadaisical response. Why? Because they proceeded on a technical premise to effectively sidestep the exercise of constitutional rights. Because the state government here used a technical parameter to do nothing. And they also used this as an excuse to defend their existing inertia in order to not incorporate Rajasthani language as a medium of instruction and a subject matter for recruitment exams. Supreme Court here made a very important statement that a right to be taught in one's mother tongue actually is covered in many important constitutional provisions, something that the court pointed out that the Rajasthani government has actually violated. So what all constitutional provisions has Rajasthani government actually violated in not providing you the medium of instruction in the mother tongue of yours? So let us cover that. Now, first comes here the Article 350A of the Constitution. The Article 350A of the Indian Constitution, it actually requires the state to provide adequate facilities for instruction in your mother tongue. And this has to be done in the primary stage of the education, specifically to those children who belong to linguistic minority groups. Now, the petitioners here, they actually stated that the Rajasthan The speaker of Rajasthani language are basically linguistic minority in the state of Rajasthan. Why did they give this petition? Because they said that Hindi is the official language of the state of Rajasthan. And according to the Supreme Court, this argument was valid, as Rajasthani speaker fall within the protections of Article 350A because they constitute a linguistic minority, and therefore they are required to be protected by the state under Article 350A. But not just this provision. Supreme Court stated that this decision of Rajasthani government also violated Article 21A of the Indian Constitution. If you remember, Article 21A of the Indian Constitution was introduced specifically to provide you the right to free and compulsory education. And this is not just normal education. This is basically a right to quality education. And if an instruction is provided to a child in any other language which he or she can't comprehend, this does not qualify as a quality instruction. And therefore, Supreme Court stated that instruction that cannot be adequately grasped by the student due to any language barrier, due to unfamiliarity of that language, cannot constitute in any meaningful way as a quality education. And therefore, this decision of Rajasthani government also violated Article 21A. Not just this, Supreme Court actually revised the meaning of Article 19(1)(a) with a wider meaning. Supreme Court stated that this right, which provides you the right to freedom of speech and expression, should be seen in wider terms. And Supreme Court stated that the meaning of the word expression here, it is basically the very essence of you being an individual. If you are able to express in a language, it shows you how your thinking has developed, how you are seen or you're recognized in a society. And if you are not able to get instruction in that language, this basically violates Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. Similarly, if you look at the national education policy, which was introduced by the central government in 2020, it specifically recommended that the instruction in the home or regional language should be provided by the state government or state up to class 5th, or there should be made an effort to provide it up to class 8th. And this is based on the premise that children understand foundational concepts much more effectively when those concepts are taught to them in the language that they understand, that is their mother tongue. And the state should also make an effort to use the technology to bridge this linguistic barrier in the classroom across both private as well as government aided schools. Now, the Supreme Court and the petitioners also pointed out that there is an inconsistency when it comes to Rajasthan's government's position, because on one hand, the state government of Rajasthan includes Gujarati, Punjabi and Sindhi in its school curriculum, but it excludes on the other hand the language of Rajasthani, and they do not just do that. To add insult to injury, they have not provided an adequate explanation so as to why they have excluded Rajasthani. So according to the Supreme Court, this basically violates use of Article 14, because Article 14 prohibits the state from discrimination without any rational basis. And this discrimination that the state government is doing against Rajasthani basically violated right to equality under Article 14. Now, let us understand what are the other observations made by the Supreme Court when it was hearing this review petition. Although Supreme Court, it did not reopen the 2021 recruitment because it has been done and dusted with, but the Supreme Court actually said something which will have implications on many recruitment exams and the medium of instructions going on in the schools, not just in India, but across the country. The Supreme Court stated that the language in education is not merely a matter of administrative convenience or a pedagogical preferences. Rather, language of education forms the very core of inclusivity, it forms the very core of identity, as well as it provides you the medium or the meaningful access to learning process. And therefore, this critical gap between the constitutional promise to protect people of linguistic minorities and their lack of implementation on the ground means that if any right just exists on the paper without implementation, it basically means there is no such right at all. So basically, how you're able to guarantee the right? Only when you implement it on the ground, and the Rajasthan government was not doing that. In addition to that, the Supreme Court stated that The right to freedom of speech and expression, which is given in Article 19(1) of the Constitution, also encompasses right to receive information which is meaningful and comprehensive. And how will you get meaningful and comprehensive information? When you are provided that information in the language which you can understand, that is your or any child's own language, that is their mother tongue. So this is why it becomes a part of freedom of speech and expression, also given in Article 19(1)(a). And Supreme Court stated that if you read the Right to Education Act of 2009, specifically section 29(2)(f), it stipulates that the medium of instruction, as far as it is practicable, should be in the child's mother tongue. And this, according to the Supreme Court, is a key provision that if you teach in an alien tongue, it risks impairment of foundational development, and it endangers a student to belong and feel a sense of alienation and apprehension when they go to school. And this is why instruction in a language which a child understands becomes very important. And therefore, the Supreme Court directed the state government to formulate a comprehensive policy on mother tongue based education, which is in line with National Education Policy of 2020. And also, it wanted the state government to recognize Rajasthani and other local and regional languages as a language used for educational purposes. And progressively, it introduced it asked the Rajasthan government to introduce Rajasthani language as a language used as a medium of instruction, and at the foundational stage, and also as a subject matter which is taught across the schools in the state of Rajasthan. So this is what the Supreme Court mandated for the Rajasthan government. And as I said, this judgment of the Supreme Court would have implications of teaching of other languages in many states which constitutes as a minority language. Okay. Now, before we move forward and solve questions that have appeared in the exams based on the kind of learnings we had today, there is a very important announcement. Right now, we are taking admissions to P2I foundation courses. If you take admissions in P2I foundation courses, which are offered separately for 2027 and 2028, and if you add the code ATS Live before making the payment, you're going to get maximum discounts on all the courses, right? So please make sure to do that. And this is the question that I want you to solve. Article 350 of the Constitution seeks to protect educational interest of the linguistic minorities. Which of the following correctly and appropriately implies the above statement? So read this question. Do let me know out of these four statements which one of the statements are correct in the comment section. And the ones who are waiting to download the notes, this is where you'd find them on the Telegram channel called as ATS Live. So this is all from my side for today. Please have a very good day. We'll meet each other again on Monday.